Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today for another Esther webinar to learn, connect, and inspire tea professionals everywhere. I'm your host, Bernadine Tay, and with me are David Veal and Alexis Kay, and I'm excited to introduce our guest, Edi Obiakpani-Reid, founder of Baiji, meaning Blank Diary, which is a beautiful specialty tea brand in the UK focused on wellness. Now, many of us who teach tea, run tea companies ourselves, we know how good tea is for you. But even though consumers understand how tea can help them with self-care, there is still a lot we need to do to provide that clarity and create a strong identity and culture that coffee seems to have done so well, so much better than tea. Now, Edi is going to be sharing some insights she's gained and what we can learn from that. As a fellow wellness and tea advocate, I am excited to hear from Edi on how we can capture the essence of tea's opportunity, the very heart of what makes it special, its nutritional powers, and its feel-good factor. Now, for the next 30 to 40 minutes, I would love you to sit back, relax, sip a cup of tea, and listen to Edi's presentation, after which please feel free to I will be answering your questions. So during the presentation, please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box below, and we promise we'll get to them. For now, welcome, Edi. We're really pleased to have you here on the webinar with us. And thank you also for joining our Esther community. But before anything else, I'd love to ask you what we ask all our guests. What does specialty tea mean to you?
Thank you so much for your introduction, Bernadine, and thank you also, David, for inviting me to speak. I'm really excited to be here today and to sort of share what I do know so far about tea and the wellness space. To your question about what does specialty tea mean to me, I think similarly to everyone here, I share the view that it's about teas being of very high quality, of very good taste, that appeal to people, an audience who loves tea and has that real appreciation and understanding of sort of the history, culture, and benefits of tea. But I think on top of that, in my view, what really is important about specialty tea is that it appeals to people with a deep understanding of all the ways that teas can be enjoyed, not only for pure drinking or tasting pleasure, but in terms of your mind, your body, your spirit. And that's sort of what I want to talk about today, the health and wellness benefits in all their facets, and how that is deeply connected to tea.
Well said. I'll let you take it away with your presentation, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions then.
Okay. So showing my screen and hoping that it works. Do let me know if you can't see it. So welcome everyone. As per Bernadine's introduction, my name is Edi and I run a small indie tea brand in East Sussex called Baiji. And when I launched Baiji, I did launch it primarily as a wellness brand, which I'll be talking a little bit more about shortly. But sort of more broadly, I want to talk a little bit today about tea's USP, the advantage that tea has not only over coffee, but in the beverage market in general, and that is the inherent health and wellness advantage that tea possesses. So this is sort of what we'll be running through today. So I want to start with a little overview of the tea versus coffee as it stands today, and then move on to talk a little bit about how historically tea has been viewed in different cultures around the world, how that connects us to the wellness industry and what the wellness industry is doing today, what sort of biases and misconceptions tea might have to overcome in order to reach a wider audience, and then just some examples, both from large sort of mass market brands and also my own brand, much smaller brand, in how to reach your target audience when you're trying to promote wellness and promote the health benefits of tea. So to start, I think it's always helpful to just recap what we might already know, but just to sort of go over the main differences between tea and coffee so far. So I think the first thing to point out is fairly obviously coffee has a deeply ingrained leisure and cafe culture, particularly in the West, but increasingly worldwide. It's often associated with socializing, a relaxing space, or even a productive space where people can take their laptop for the day to work. Coffee shops are this sort of communal, cozy place, whereas tea, generally speaking, is seen more of as a functional beverage. And it's got this kind of dual aspect to it where it's both quite mass, you know, anyone can buy tea from the shop, take it home and make it by boiling the kettle. But at the same time, it has an inaccessible aspect to it. Tea ceremonies that we associate with traditional cultures can seem quite foreign and not very modern as well. Whereas I think coffee's branding has invested heavily in the lifestyle market. They've collaborated a lot with influencers. They're now, if you watch any influencer video on Instagram or TikTok, the first thing that they always do is make a very fancy latte, right? So coffee, in that sense, also has a very ritualized preparation culture. And we see that as well with the training of professional baristas to work at coffee shops. And today, even though you know, coffee has been seen kind of associated with, you know, productivity, you get your caffeine kick and then you get going. Today, what we're seeing coffee do is shift a little bit towards promoting the health benefits of coffee. But even though coffee has started doing this, I think that tea implicitly has an advantage over coffee when it comes to that. And that's definitely something that we should be capitalizing on. So just to, again, run through a couple of things that you might already know, but I think it's important to contextualize, is that tea has always been known around the world for its health and wellness properties. In China, for example, tea was solely drunk as a medicinal drink until the 6th century. And it was something that was reserved, again, for the upper classes. It wasn't very accessible until tea house culture started to spread throughout the country. So tea houses really were kind of like the original cafes, right? And this, even though it's located mainly in East Asia, also in South Asia and Southeast Asia, the idea that tea can be sort of like a social drink, it has existed already. So it's not like, it's not something that can be reintroduced in modern society. In both China and also Japan, the tea ceremony is very heavily entwined with everyday life and with the culture. So tea is not only used for its health properties, but also its spiritual and sort of mental health properties as well. And when it comes to things like the matcha ceremony and sort of the creating of matcha, we see that kind of replicated today. So you might see, as well as, say, influencers on Instagram creating these coffees, sometimes you do see them creating these very fancy matcha lattes. In fact, I was in my work's office on Monday and I actually saw somebody preparing matcha from scratch, which was, I had to comment on it to him because I thought that was just so interesting that he brought all these items with him. And he said something along the lines of, well, you know, that's what addiction will do for you. Also, I really like the process of making it. So I think that combining sort of the health benefits with also the mindset, so wellness aspect of it and the spirituality of it is also something to bear in mind. In India as well, traditional teas, chai, that contain different spices in them, like cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, and cloves, have all been valued for their sort of warming properties, their digestive benefits, and the immune boosting effects. So when we're talking about wellness teas, these are the sorts of ideas I think that should be brought to the fore and discussed, not only in terms of the historical significance, but also in terms of the fact that there's this long history and long culture of tea being used for its wellness benefits, and it's something that is still relevant to today. And this slide is supposed to show exactly how it's still relevant to today. So these are different figures about the modern day wellness industry. They're taken partly from Kantar, which is a global research company, and also a company called the Global Wellness Institute, which does its own research and surveys into the global wellness industry. So as we can see from these charts, the wellness industry in general is a very valuable and growing industry worldwide. Its value in 2022 was stood at 5.6 trillion US dollars, and it's projected to grow by around 8% every single year. The healthy eating, nutrition, and weight loss sector, which is where tea would fall in, is actually the second largest sector and was one of only 2 sectors that continued to grow during the pandemic. So that was really interesting to me, because while people weren't able to, say, go to the gym as often or to travel as much, maybe attend the spa or go to their yoga classes in person, they were still able to take care of themselves at home by preparing food and engaging more with a healthy lifestyle. People who had to commute to the office a lot suddenly found themselves at home more, making sourdough bread, and just thinking more generally about how to protect their own health and immunity. So overall, the wellness industry is supposed to reach 8.4 trillion US dollars value by 2027. So this is a heavily growing industry. And currently the healthy eating sector is valued at over 1 trillion US dollars. So there's a lot of value there. And what the Global Wellness Institute says about this sector is that much of the spending growth has been focused on quick fixes, where consumers can compensate for what's deficient in their diet. So people want food and drink to choose from that's labeled healthy, and that can be incorporated into their existing regimes. So people don't want fuss, they don't want faff, they want something that's accessible to them that can already go with the lifestyle that they've cultivated. So in terms of tea, when linking it to wellness, wellness is generally defined as the active pursuit of activities, lifestyles, etc., that lead to the physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being of someone. And when I talk about tea here, I just want to say that I'm broadly referring to all things that people would consider a tea. So tisanes, infusions, botanicals, however you refer to it. This is what most consumers, I'm sure you know, would refer to as tea, sort of a leaf or a flower, something like that in hot water, sometimes a root as well. But more generally, when we're talking about wellness teas, we're talking about combining different ingredients in whatever combination works best, as shown by the chart on the left-hand side, that can be incorporated into people's lifestyles. So on the topic as well of what does specialty tea mean, obviously the quality matters a lot. So when people talk about coffee as well, when you engage with coffee culture, you notice that people are very concerned with provenance. Where does this coffee come from? Where does it originate from? Are there any artificial flavors? Is it organic? Is it fair trade? What's in this coffee? They want to know all about it. And I think it's also important to incorporate that kind of understanding when it comes to teas as well. When we talk about people who are interested in wellness, they're interested, generally speaking, in all aspects of their consumption, right? So they want to know that they're getting a good quality product. It's also important that wellness teas are sort of wrapped up in a larger picture of people's lifestyle, that they're not something that's separate that people have to go out of their way to engage in. Rather, it's part of their morning routine, it's part of their afternoon routine, and it's part of their evening routine. That's what it means to have sort of a healthy lifestyle and a holistic lifestyle. People don't want to feel like it's coming from outside and sort of imposing, or they have to change too much about themselves. And people also want to feel like an expert as well. People who are interested in wellness like to feel educated, like they know what they're talking about. So in that sense, it's our role to give this guidance that consumers can tailor to their own needs and experiences. If they have issues with their hormones, or they have something that they want to improve, like their sleep quality, or they're maintaining their energy levels throughout the day. This is something where we have to be quite targeted, but also be able to provide enough information that someone can take away anything and apply it to themselves at the same time. So I'm sure a lot of you have run into this problem before where, you're at a market or at an exhibition or whatever it is, and you're talking to somebody about how amazing your tea is, and they kind of hit you with the very glib line, oh, well, I don't really like tea, right? Or, oh, I've tried green tea before and I didn't really like the taste. So there are a lot of biases and misconceptions that have to be overcome when we are talking about tea. Like I said before as well, it can seem very inaccessible in terms of tea ceremonies and the culture surrounding tea. And so in that sense, that's where wellness can kind of step in as well and kind of be like, well, maybe it's not all about what you understand, but there are other aspects to tea that you might not have explored before. So in the first sense, when we're talking about things like taste, I think it's important as well to educate consumers on the fact that specialty tea is different from mass market tea, and that they can explore things like experimentation, especially if they're trying to improve their wellness, right? So in the middle is a picture of an example that I came across not too long ago, actually, when I was looking for different ways to make chamomile tea a bit more appealing. So I've seen a trend, this was on Pinterest, and I also saw someone making it on Instagram, of chamomile tea lattes, where they combine chamomile tea over ice. They might add a little bit of honey if they want it a bit sweeter, and then they add a bit of oat milk as well to sort of maintain the balance of taste. And a lot of people were saying, oh, this makes it taste better. Like, I didn't like chamomile tea before, but now I do like it. So in terms of getting over that hump of, oh, I don't really like tea, it's important, I think, to encourage experimentation. And again, this links back to getting people to integrate it into their own lifestyles and routines. I think when it comes to branding and promoting the effects of the tea as well over the taste, again, it's important to educate people to know that they should focus on themselves and what they're trying to achieve, right? So they should focus on their own health goals, their own wellness goals. If there's someone who does a lot of yoga or meditation, there are teas that can connect directly with that. And the practice of drinking tea and how it integrates with mindfulness. So if you've just spent the day at the spa, for example, this is something that I do when I get to go to the spa, is I love sitting down after all my treatments and just having a very quiet cup of tea in the garden. That's one of my favorite parts. So it's very important to emphasize the sort of mindful aspects of tea as well. And again, that goes back to sort of the spiritual wellness benefits. And then finally, I think showcasing tea's versatility, especially when compared to coffee. Coffee really only does one thing, right? Whereas tea, you've got all sorts of green teas, black teas, white teas, herbal teas, it can go on forever. So the customizability of tea, the flexibility, and the ability for there to be a sort of tea for everything is something that can really be honed in on for what seems like a niche market. But in actual fact, if you're talking about there's a health benefit for everyone, for everything, it's actually not that niche. It then becomes a mass market of people who are interested in improving their own health and wellness. So I just wanted to sort of pivot onto that sort of mass market idea of promoting health and wellness and talk a little bit about some of the campaigns that you may or may not be familiar with that are promoting healthy teas. So we're all familiar with Pukka, probably. I'd be surprised if you weren't. So Pukka sort of launched as this indie tea and was acquired by Unilever in 2017, but their branding has always focused on the health and wellness benefits, and it's very obvious in the way that they name their teas as well. And according to Kantar, Pukka are the largest herbal tea company in the UK, and they've always had that sort of at the time that they launched, it was more niche, but they've always had that angle of, we are here for your health. We're focused on people who are interested in wellness. So it goes to show that even mass market brands or sort of smaller brands can become mass market through using wellness. If we look at brands that were already big before they pivoted, so brands like Twinings and TikTok, you can see that they've added lines to their existing ranges that again are focusing on health and wellness. So Twinings, for example, launched their Super Blends range in 2018 in the UK, which expanded in 2021 to the US. And this is supposed to be their sort of dietary supplement range of teas. So they really focus in on the fact that there are, vitamin C's, vitamin B1, B6, they're directly appealing to people who go out of the way to get this knowledge. People who know what B6 is for, people who know why you should take magnesium before you go to sleep and things like that. A few sort of smaller indie brands, things like Dirty, who kind of position their brand as an alternative to regular coffee, but with a focus on the adaptogenic mushrooms. And they've used the word tea in their naming as well. So they're trying to capture sort of all sorts of audiences there, people who are into tea, people who are into coffee, people who are maybe into more like protein shakes, people who are into experimental teas. But again, their focus is solely on what are the benefits that you can get from drinking it. And then I've got another example at the bottom, Hot Tea Mama. This is a very small brand that focuses almost entirely on either pregnant women or breastfeeding women. So people who are going through a very specific stage in life. But if you go to their website and look at their reviews, they've got glowing reviews because, again, although it's a small niche, it's a need that people have. They have teas that are supposed to help you get your milk up. They have teas that are supposed to help you through the latter stages of pregnancy, if you get specific symptoms during your pregnancy, like morning sickness. So again, this is focusing on something very niche, but there is a very particular audience for it that is captive at that point. So those are sort of the more mass market brands. If we take a very small company, so this example is actually my own company, which is Baiji. So if you're a smaller brand looking to launch in the wellness space, you want to know sort of how you can position yourself and how you can approach looking for your target audience in order to promote specifically the wellness aspects of your tea. So my own brand was launched out of a desire to enhance my own wellness and look after my own health. The pink tea on the far right is called Relieve. So that tea was specially formulated to help alleviate period pains and the symptoms of PMS. So this is a very women's health focused tea, but it's something that I had developed myself and then wanted to share with others. And that's kind of how I positioned my brand from the beginning. So my initial line of 3 teas, the green tea being a green tea that's focused on sort of energy and immune support. And then the yellow tea, which is a chamomile tea, which is to help with relaxation, stress, and sleep. And then I've included some reviews as well, not because I want to show off that I get good reviews, but because I wanted to show you a bit about what people were saying about the teas. So apart from saying that, the tea is of good quality and that they, are repeat buyers, there are also people who are saying, I buy this tea specifically for X reason. So again, going back to the idea of specialty tea and wellness teas, it's important that the tea is high quality. But at the same time, it's important that in the positioning and in the branding, you're talking about what this tea can do for you. Often when I interact with people, when I go to markets or exhibitions and things like that, people will say to me, why should I buy your tea? Why should I not buy a tea from the supermarket? And when I can sort of grill down into the nitty-gritty of, well, this is what sets my tea apart. It's this kind of quality. It's this leaf that you've never heard from before. It's this single origin source of raspberry leaf that you can't get anywhere else. And kind of drill down into like, well, do you have any problems with this or that? And they might say yes or no. then it appeals to people who, again, are interested in tea, but want something that does something, right? Often people who are interested in tea have cupboards overflowing with tea that they've got from different brands. So when you have something that makes you unique and stand out, then that's something that can help you kind of appeal to them a bit more and get into their cupboard as well. And focusing on health and wellness is one of those qualities. So I just want to talk a little bit about how I found out who my audience was exactly. So I don't know if anybody uses Pinterest at all, but I found that it's not only a good place to sort of do research into what other brands are doing, get some inspiration for, say, photography for your brand, but it's also a good place to promote your products. If you run a blog on your website in order to improve your SEO, to get people sort of clicking and going back to your blog and things like that. And then Pinterest analytics are very good in that they're very detailed and they can give you a lot of information about what your audience, who your audience exactly is, and also who your engaged audience is, which is sometimes even more important. So just looking at my audience here, this is taken from my own Pinterest analytics, you can see that over 90% of them are interested in food and drinks, as you would expect, and also health. So immediately I know that I'm hitting the right people, that my branding, my messaging is saying the correct thing. And particularly those people are interested in diet and nutrition and also lifestyle. So again, I know that my branding is working because I'm finding the type of people that I would hope to find. They're mainly women and they're mainly aged sort of 25 to like their late 30s. Again, all things that I would hope to see. So just taking a look at the type of things that I put on Pinterest as well that have helped me narrow down my audience. So this pin on the left-hand side here is quite simple. It didn't take me that long to make, but it's just kind of explaining the 5 different teas that are good for hormonal balance for different reasons. And these figures here show you the impressions that they've had over the course of the past 30 days. So it's been seen by over 200,000 people and over 12,000 people have clicked on it, which means that they've clicked on it and followed it out to whatever web page. It leads them to, in the case of this one, it's a blog post that explains it in more detail. And then that blog post then links out to the products as well. Similarly with this, this pin on the right-hand side, this one links out to actual products because these are the ingredients that go into my main line of tea. And as you can see, people have been saving these pins as well. So saving basically means that they come back to it for later, either for inspiration or because they want to revisit potentially buying it later. So I just wanted to give this as a demonstration because I use other platforms as well. But I wanted to just kind of show that if you weren't aware of, say, Pinterest or things like that, that your audience might be in unexpected places, places that you haven't thought to look, or angles that you haven't really explored that much because you didn't know that that audience existed there. The same thing can apply to in-person events. I don't know what kind of events everybody goes to, but I know that I met Bernadine and the others at Cafe Culture last year, which is when I signed up. And it was a lovely event. And we were just talking before we came on actually about how, how good it can be to visit multiple times, the good quality of leads that you can get from that kind of event. But I wanted to also touch on when you're talking about health and wellness, we're not just talking about sort of the food and drink industry here, we also need to explore the health and wellness industry. And these are some events that have actually reached out to me. I didn't reach out to them to sign up. These people came to me and they said, hi, we think that your product would be a great fit for our festival, for our exhibition, for our multi-day event, whatever it is. And they give examples of other tea brands that have been, people like Yogi Tea, Wild Chai, and other brands in the wellness space that go to these events and have great success, not only with consumers, because a lot of these are consumer events, but also with potential business contacts as well. So attending festivals where there might be spa owners in attendance, hoteliers in attendance, retreat or like sort of country retreat kind of getaway owners. I've been invited to retreats by yoga teachers as well who want to have sort of like a enhanced wellness offering as part of their overall retreat, which is always a really special event. I did an event with somebody who owns a fine art gallery as well. So again, when we're talking about health and wellness, these opportunities might be in places that you didn't necessarily expect them to be. And so while I think that places like the Specialty and Fine Food Fair or the London Coffee Show are great events, I think that expanding the horizon when it comes to wellness and looking at other wellness and health-based events might be another potential great source of business. So just to kind of summarize and start wrapping up so we can get to the good bit, which is the conversation, I just want to go over what I've presented. So I think, first of all, what I want to hone in on is the fact that we should be the guides and educators when it comes to taking customers on a journey of tea. We don't want to sort of bore, we don't want to patronize, but we have to be able to give people enough information that they can then take away and apply to their own experiences. I think also when it comes to comparing tea to coffee, I think it's okay for tea to be niche and to be exclusive. Often exclusivity is the thing that makes people feel like they're part of something. You know, people have a favorite coffee shop. They might like to go to Joe's Coffee instead of Starbucks because it feels a bit more indie. And so it's possible to kind of take that coolness and kind of customize it and tailor it to tea. It's cool because it's different as well. In terms of branding, I think it's still important that tea is presented aesthetically. It's still important that tea is aspirational, especially if you're using a lot of visual marketing. It can't look medicinal, it can't look dated. It can't come off as something that only older people drink this because it helps them maintain their health. Tea is very versatile. It can be served hot, it can be served cold, it can be served blended with honey, you can make them into mocktails, it can be an iced tea. Tea is so much more versatile, I think, than coffee, especially because of the range of different blends, different flavors that you can get. It's what's important is to just modernize that. And I think in terms of bringing it up to date with modern audiences as well, the same applies. You can still use influencers, but they're not going to be the same influencers that the coffee industry is using, right? They're not going to be general lifestyle influencers. They might be yoga influencers. They might be health coaches. They might be wellness and mindset coaches and things like that. So we can still use these same avenues for marketing, branding, but we have to put our own unique spin on it. We have to make it modern, and we have to give that information straight up to consumers, treat them like they can too be knowledgeable, and they can take their health into their own hands, and that tea is something that can be integrated very easily into their lifestyles. So that's it from me. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me go on about that. And thank you again to Alexis and Bernadine and David for your notes and for inviting me on to speak.
Oh, first of all, thank you, Eddie, for that passionate and insightful presentation. It was truly, truly wonderful. And it's everything that we, do here at Esther. We share knowledge to help all of us grow and help the tea industry grow, because we know this beverage we call tea is really, really interesting and good for you. So it's been super helpful, and thank you for that wonderful information. In fact, I think the audience has a lot of good things to say about your presentation. First of all, I'll read you some. Dr. Shazia Ilgaz says, I follow the presentation with pleasure. I wholeheartedly congratulate the young entrepreneur, that's you, and wish her continued success.
Thank you so
That's
much.
amazing. And also Kayla Anderson, she says, she's amazing, incredibly through her tea brand, and so lovely and incredibly insightful when it comes to well-being. I full-heartedly agree and wholeheartedly agree. So, yes, thank you very much for that. While we wait for other people's questions to come in, and please do feel free, don't be shy, put your questions to Eddie. This is your chance to ask her anything about presentation in the Q&A box below. I wanted to ask you actually, you mentioned your colleague who took all the matcha paraphernalia into the office and, made the ritual there. And it really speaks to me because I do the same thing. But then we as tea professionals, we already love tea and we have our own little habits and rituals. But do you think these seemingly elaborate rituals is a barrier for people who want to get into tea for wellness? Do you think that's a barrier? They think, oh my God, I've got to have all these things and it takes so much time. What do you think?
I think that's a really good point. I think what I focused in on when he sort of brought out everything, including the special cup as well. He had his own special mug. He didn't use an office mug. What he said initially was, "It's amazing what addiction can do for you." I think he meant addiction positively. I'm hoping that he did.
Uh, and
But
yes.
yeah, but I think that's something that the coffee industry has really been able to capitalize on, right? My parents have the fanciest coffee machine that definitely belongs in a coffee shop. It's way too fancy for two people who live alone. But they really focus in on that ritual. They make it part of their everyday. Every day at 1 o'clock, they stop working and they're like, oh, we're having a coffee break. They bring out all the paraphernalia. They descale the machine. They refill it with like Brita filtered water and everything like that. They pick out special beans for different occasions. And I think actually, from what I've seen in this everyday experiences, is actually not that the ritual is a barrier, but rather it's something that people want to personalize. It's something that people want to incorporate into their everyday lives. And people do have busy lives. They have children, they have full-time jobs, but these rituals can actually create little oases almost in the chaos. He was in the office. We work in central London, in the office, in a very plain, open plan office. And there he is with his matcha set, taking his time in the morning to create this ritual for himself. And I think that's something that people actually think is really important. And I think that's something that should be encouraged, not stepped away from.
I totally agree. And having attended the London Coffee Festival, as we discussed, yesterday, and to see how coffee has really, even though you're right, because it takes time, there's a lot of expensive equipment that people, are willing to buy. It's the emotional benefit they already realize that is available, that they're willing to go through all those steps. And I think it's just making sure that we position tea correctly, create the lifestyle, create the aesthetics, and then attract the tribe to come and join this movement, isn't it?
Yes, totally.
Okay, so I have a few questions that I'd love to read to you. First of all, this is one from Tim Bond. He says, "Hello, great presentation, and thank you for sharing your enthusiasm, approach, and especially Pinterest insights. Now, do you have any advice on on-pack and website social media wording to avoid issues with regulators? Parker have had to withdraw product from the market and rename brands and reduce ingredients such as detox is considered a health claim by advertising standards and agency and trading standards." I think we discussed this yesterday. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I think that being careful around your wording is very important. The way I label my teas, I don't use right on the front, like this will cure period pains. I give them kind of roundabout names like relax or relieve, revive. And I think it's actually important to be careful about your wording because you don't want to mislead people. Not everything works the same way for everyone, right? And again, it's about people tailoring it to their own experiences. I think when it comes to linking, I think what's important is to link all your branding together. So what I found with Pinterest is that I'll have the product on my website, and same with Facebook, you can't use Facebook marketing, you can't use certain health claims in Facebook marketing. So the teas actually can't have that much written on the packaging, but I might have a blog post on my website that talks in detail about this tea has been used in the past for this. There's health studies, on different websites as well that you can link out to and say, it's been studied. It wasn't conclusive, but some people showed really positive outcomes from using this tea. And then you can turn that blog post into something more aesthetic, like a pin, like a did you know that people drink chamomile tea to help them relax, to help them distress, and to help them sleep. Links back to your blog post, the blog post then links back to the product. So I think it's about having, if you're using something like Pinterest, it's about having something very streamlined that doesn't sort of dance around it, but kind of indirectly, right? And people are more intelligent than I think we give them credit for, especially in the health and wellness space. People are discovering. Pinterest is a discovery platform. People go on there to learn, to collect information, to explore new things. So yeah, I think in that exploration, if you can position it attractively, people will dig in deeper and then be drawn onto your website and then towards your products.
So what you're saying is, I think that's a great suggestion. So what you're saying is, rather than, say that this tea will help this, you talk about maybe a certain ingredient that could help relieve the pain, and then feature your product so that they associate, say, for example, raspberry leaf with period pain and Baiji tea. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Tim. Thank you very much. Okay, so next, I had a hand raised by Belinda Davenport. Belinda, let me just allow Belinda to speak and maybe perhaps ask you the question. Go ahead, Belinda.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether you can see me actually. Apologies, I'm having to use my phone because my computer's not working. I have a tea room that basically I've been using for the last few years, number of years, as basically a little bit of research and development. So every table I use and speak to everybody regarding their tea preferences, where they've got tea from, and their understanding of tea. So I've actually built up quite a number of information over the last 20 years. Just be slightly careful about assuming information on data that is produced by social media. Our social media says that for our tea room, that our average age is about 30, and it isn't. We've got a huge range of ages, but it's actually older. We tend to have 3 generations on a table, and so unfortunate. One of the things that people say regarding, literally most people think of tea for about a hundredth of a second when they're going down the supermarket aisle and they spot their actual brand. But one thing that they're not aware of is most people have said to me that they really do want to be able to not have sugar, to not have milk, to be able to drink tea when they're non-tea drinkers. If they are tea drinkers, they very often drink coffee outside and about because they know that tea's not very well made outside and about in the high street. We're based in Cheshire, by the way. And very often in terms of health and well-being, they may have tried, they've all tried, a lot of people have tried during particularly during the pandemic, the green tea, and most people, and there's a lot of people that have had green tea, most people have not actually understood that you need to lower the temperature. So they've found it bitter and they've found it flat. So it's the understanding of being able to do the correct brewing, because when we present that tea to them for a taster, they absolutely love it. The other thing is talking about teas that are fruit teas or fruit infusions. There is so many out there that are putting people off tea, off the infusers, because they never live up to their expectations in terms of taste. There's quite a huge debate on this, and I would love to talk to you a bit more, but I don't want to hog the screen as such. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. That from my experience, we've been doing it nearly 20 years. And as I said, I've got a sort of a thing about talking to people at the table and finding out all sorts of information.
Indeed.
So
I can vouch
well done. Thank you, Bernadine. So well done on your journey. And I'll sign out with that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you for your insights.
Yeah. Thank
Yes,
you so
I can.
much. Can I talk about a couple of things that were mentioned?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much because I think you've pointed out something so important, which is that in-person feedback is 10 times more valuable than what you get on, your analytics, whether that's on Shopify or social media, whatever it is, because somebody telling you to your face, I've tried this and I didn't like it, or I tried this and I love it, that can, really mean a lot basically when you're trying to figure out where to go next with your brand, what might work and what might not. I agree with you as well on the ages as well. My in-person audience skews way higher. Obviously, that's like social media usage is obviously used by people who are slightly younger. But in terms of people who are interested in tea in general as a relaxing beverage instead of coffee, it skews order for me as well. And yeah, I think was that the main points. Yeah, I think just thank you for like pointing out all of those things. It's really interesting to hear from someone who's got such a long tail of experience.
Oh, indeed. And
Belinda
Belinda has a really, really good relationship with her customers because she talks to every single one of them. But I agree with you. I think getting a bad review is actually golden. Or not bad review, but a bad feedback. It's golden because people don't often share what they really think. So if someone tells you what they truly think, it's an honest opinion. Yeah, that's golden. But I have quite a lot of questions from the floor. So let me get to Carolyn Lang, who says, what are the regulations around saying this tea is good for you? I am in Canada and they are really tightening the health industry, particularly naturopathic supplements. I want to promote healthy teas and herbals as I have taken certificates in Ayurveda, meditation, and yoga. Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you so much. So I would say in terms of promoting it, in terms of your marketing, your branding, what it says on your packaging, you really need to pay very close attention to the regulations in your country or your region. We were talking about this yesterday with how Europe doesn't allow beverages to say that they have direct health benefits, and that sent me on a rabbit hole. I actually spent more time looking into this and looking into different regions. It's a lot more lax in, say, the United States, for example, than it might be in other areas. And in the UK as well, it's more relaxed than it is in Europe. So in terms of the actual brand positioning, that's where you have to really look into the regulation. Otherwise, your ads will be stopped, or, you might get your website taken down. But in terms of how you can promote it in other ways, I think, again, we were just talking about doing in-person stuff, right? And you saying that you've got qualifications in meditation. Congratulations on getting all those qualifications. They sound really cool. Yeah. I think connecting with people in those spaces might actually be a valuable way to promote teas. Like I said, I've been invited to wellness events. I've been invited to yoga retreats and sort of like getaway retreats and things like that. At those retreats, you are freer to talk a little bit more about what your teas can do for people, and you can talk to people directly. You can discuss, well, I have a lot of trouble sleeping, or I have an iron deficiency and I run out of energy throughout the day. And you can get into those deep dive conversations if you do a lot more networking with people in that field. And I think that's the advantage that tea has in the wellness industry. You can get into the industry and talk to the industry insiders and get your products in front of the audience through working with other businesses in that space.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I hope that answers your question, Carolyn. Okay, so let me just read something from Virginia Lovelace. Hi, Virginia. So enjoyed your presentation, especially appreciate your discussion of branding for people today. It's a very, very good point. Now we're going to a question from Nigel Milligan. Well done, Eddie. An interesting presentation. His question is, many health and wellness claims around are based on pretty flimsy evidence, weight loss teas, or just pure bad science, detox teas. How can we reduce the fraudulent hype and protect the demonstrable claims?
That's a very good question. I think so I have a friend actually who works for a brand that did launch one of those detox teas. And I think I can't remember when the scandal was in the UK where it's like get your beach body ready. They had those adverts in the tube. And they said that the fallout from those adverts actually caused their sales to skyrocket. Like there was like, even though there was all this negative media attention, people became more interested in detox and slimming teas. So I agree that, and like if you look at social media culture as well, you see influencers and celebrities doing these so positive habits, getting certain procedures or taking certain medicines, and those filter down to younger people directly through those means. So I think what's important for teas to do is not so much focus on the direct health benefits, like you will lose weight, or if you have for women, if you have endometriosis, if you drink this tea, your endometriosis will be cured. I think it's way more about turning tea into something that is a lifestyle habit that is chic, modern, and incorporates seamlessly into your life. If you look at coffee, coffee never says if you drink 3 cups of coffee a day, you'll never feel tired again, right? But everybody knows that coffee contains caffeine, and caffeine can give you an energy boost. It works differently for different people, but the people who it does work for, and the people who do enjoy it, have found a way to incorporate that seamlessly into their lifestyles. And I think that that's what tea needs to focus on. It needs to not focus so much on like this, these are the hard scientific facts, but more on this is what this could do for you. Have you tried exploring this? How can you incorporate this into your lifestyle? And not only will it have for your body, but also for your emotional and mental health as well, which are never properly covered by scientific studies anyway.
No, I think you're right. And a very good word you use in your, I think maybe not your strap line, but one of your values of Baiji is balance, isn't it? Which is something I think tea, it really, really captures the lifestyle and the culture around tea, which is it's a stark difference from coffee, which is, energy, hype,
Yeah, like that power branding.
loud, yes. Power, exactly. Coffee is loud and tea is soft. And I think the word balance is really good because you can really bring out the wider benefits of your whole lifestyle change if you bring tea into your life. I think the
Absolutely.
balance.
And I think if you look on social media now, sort of the idea of hustle culture is going out of fashion, waking up at 5 a.m. and working late. And you see new trends coming out like the soft life, like people pulling back from leaning into the hustle all the time and wanting to take a softer, more balanced approach to their life. So even in popular culture, these trends are emerging, and these are things that we can capitalize on, I think, fairly straightforwardly.
Indeed. Monica says, by the way, on our Q&A chat, thank you for a great presentation. It has been a pleasure to follow it. You're getting very good reviews.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your lovely messages.
Okay, Paula Winchester. Hi, Paula. She says, I have always been told that when having a cup of tea, that is, if you add milk, that negates the goodness of tea's antioxidants. So with these many wellness lattes, does that idea remain when you add milk, some wellness factors disseminate?
So when I don't know the exact science behind this, but whenever I've seen these sort of wellness lattes being made, because they're often made by wellness lifestyle influencers, or just in general, the recipes are from people who are interested in health and wellness, they often use milk alternatives or cow's milk alternatives. So things like oat milk, things like soy milk. I know people have their own sort of beliefs about those milks and sort of sustainability and things like that. But again, I think this is where experimentation comes into it. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about the science to provide any sort of views on that. But I think in terms of experimenting in order to maximize the benefits for the individual is something that also needs to be explored.
Indeed. I wonder also whether these lattes just help attract people to explore tea more, perhaps. Maybe that's the purpose that they serve, just to help people discover different types of tea. But okay, so I have a question from Sarah. She says, many thanks, very fluent and clear presentation. Perhaps one question that comes to mind, when you promote tea from a wellness point of view for hormonal balance or stress or pains and otherwise, how do you provide a disclaimer indicating that it is not medical advice unless you are medically schooled, but assuming that most of us are not?
I usually say just that it's not medical advice. When I talk about it, especially with the hormonal or teas around menstrual distress, I use anecdotal evidence a lot of the time, which again is not entirely reliable, but when people like reviews for a reason, I talk about my own journey with teas. I talk about people that I know, and when I go to events, I often discuss with people. You can go on my page and see people who have endometriosis or have PCOS who have been taking it regularly and they've had these benefits. And again, it's not about curing these things, because drinking 2 cups of raspberry leaf tea a day will not cure your endometriosis. But again, if you have a lifestyle that is a sort of encompasses managing different health issues that you might have, it's about incorporating it into that, not necessarily solving it, not necessarily being a doctor. Something that I didn't mention in the presentation, I did have a line on it, but I completely forgot, is that it's important to talk about how teas do and do not react with medicines that people are taking. And that's where having face-to-face conversations really work. For example, with raspberry leaf tea, I do put a disclaimer saying that you shouldn't take this if you're in the first 2 trimesters of your pregnancy, because that's what the NHS says. So it's important as well when you're promoting something that you don't promote that it's a cure, that it's actually just something that you can incorporate in your lifestyle. It may or may not work. Everybody is different. And yeah, it's something to be explored, not something to kind of solve all of your problems necessarily.
Thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Shazia Ilgaz says, thank you for your excellent presentation, Eddie. If you don't mind, she wants to ask, which is the herbal tea in your blends that differentiates yourself from bulk herbal teas? From, I think, mass market herbal teas.
So for each blend, it's different. I would say there are, so for example, with the green tea, I specifically use Huangshan Maofeng. And the reason that I chose that, and this is what I tell my customers as well, is because I don't like teas that taste very strong. So I deliberately went out and did my research into finding a leaf that wasn't overly like astringent. It didn't matter if you weren't brewing it at the perfect temperature every time, it still was going to taste fairly light and fairly palatable. And then with the other flavors as well, it was more for me about the experimentation. I don't know if I can flick back to that slide very quickly. Don't know if you can see the ingredients on the raspberry leaf tea, but I've combined it with jujube, peppermint leaf, and orange peel. This is not just for the health benefits, but it's also for taste as well. People who want to add sugar to their tea but are trying to cut back on that, the jujube actually makes the raspberry leaf tea quite sweet. And so if you're trying to drink it for the wellness benefits, i.e. to help you with PMS or bloating before your period, but you don't really like it because it tastes kind of bland or kind of earthy, well, this one's got jujube in it. So it has a slightly sweet honeyish taste. And for me, again, this was sort of trial and error on my part, trying to make something that worked for me and that I would feel comfortable sharing with other people. But yeah, what I think differentiates it is I went through very carefully and selected the ingredients that not only work together for taste and for presentation, but were generally speaking higher quality and from good sources that I could trust.
And maybe perhaps the lesser known types of herbs that helps differentiate your blend from others, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people, whenever people come up to me, they're like, oh, raspberry leaf. My midwife made me drink that when I was about to give birth, and it's supposed to help you in childbirth. And I'm like, aha, but did you also know that it can help some people with this? And you can also drink it at this point. So yeah, the what's going on? The goji berry, thank you. The goji berry in my chamomile tea. I specifically chose a dried goji berry because it turns blue when you brew it. But goji berries are also kind of a superfood as well. So everything that I've chosen has been chosen specifically, not only for the health benefits, but also so that it can differentiate the tea in some way.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's now, we're almost time to wrap up, but I have a few more really interesting comments and potential questions. Let me just whiz through them if that's okay. Okay, Lisa Lely says, congratulations, Eddie. I'll personally share what you wrote about modernized tea culture. Esther did it very well, choosing a great photo in its brochure, a young man with tattoos and bracelets. This helps to attract young community and both women and men. Thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
That nice.
I know exactly what picture you're talking about as well.
Me too. Me too. The one with the teacup.
Yeah.
Oh no, the one with the bracelet. Sorry, with
Yeah.
pouring. Yeah.
Yeah, the pouring one. Yeah.
Amanda says, I think the conception of the price of tea, which is essentially a bag and a cup if you're buying a takeaway cup from somewhere like Starbucks or Pretz, is much lower value than coffee, which is carefully prepared in front of you with beans, milk, pretty barista patterns. I quite agree, isn't it?
Sorry, I'm just thinking, like something came to my mind immediately, which is that someone, don't ask me who, but somebody once said that when consumers are shopping, they're not buying a product, they're buying a lifestyle. And I think that's so important to think about. The number one compliment I get when I'm at a market is that your packaging looks really good. Oh, this is interesting. What's that? It's the first thing that makes people stop and look, right? It's not necessarily about being the first. It's about being kind of the thing that appeals to users more. Google wasn't the first search engine. There have been loads of search engines before Google. It probably wasn't even the first one we all used, but it's the one people use now because it looks good, it functions well, it does exactly what you want it to do, it has that appeal. Same thing with things like Amazon, or why people buy iPhones instead of Androids. It's about that consumer appeal, and that's what makes people pay a premium, right? People do care about the quality of the ingredients, what the health and wellness benefits are, and all those things, but it also matters how those things are presented to people, and that's what they'll pay for at the end of the day. And that's why Starbucks costs so much.
Indeed. I quite agree. Okay, this is a comment from Virginia Lovelace, which she is a medical professional, and she says, incidentally, True Tea is used for decreasing absorption of iron in people with iron overload or chromatosis. Thank you, Virginia, for that factoid. Belinda Davenport, she says, one thing I wanted to add is my focus on minimizing the risk of dementia and its association with tea. British Heart Foundation doesn't promote drinking green tea to lower high blood pressure, yet when you go to the consultant advising the BHF, his website has narrowed down to 15 studies that have identified that it does help lower blood pressure, but they won't promote it as there's not enough studies. The WHO does not publish data on China, and countries such as Japan are limited to the higher income population. It's quite frustrating.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I have so many blog posts on my my own website talking about these things, because if you look at there's a way to kind of search Google's back catalog to find out what people are Googling. So you can see what do people search for when they search for green tea. And one of the top searches is, what is a green tea good for? Right? So people are interested in this and they do want to know, and it is something that should be promoted. And I think that that's definitely something that, you know, if you're doing SEO work or if you're just promoting your tea in general through marketing channels, these studies that have actually been done that you can bring into your own body of work, I think definitely should be incorporated.
Indeed. Okay, we have one quickly from Caroline Lang. She says, are you a herbalist or did you work with someone to develop your tea line?
I'm not a herbalist, but I did work with somebody who has is not a degree, like a qualification. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I don't know what the name of the qualification is. But basically it's what allows them to work at Holland and Barrett. I don't know if that gives any guidance, but I did sit down with them. It's a good friend of mine. Sit down with them, ask them lots of questions when formulating these things, and I'm planning in the future also on expanding my tea line. And it's something that I talk to them about a lot, like what customers are looking for, what are the new trends. They have access to that kind of information. So yeah, it's something that I think I would probably like to work on in the future if I continued promoting these sorts of wellness teas in the future, definitely.
Well, that's fantastic. And last but not least, and thank you for staying with us, everyone, even though we've run out of time. Alexis has said this, which nicely rounds off what we know about tea. It is rarely mentioned, but I believe the most important substance in tea is theanine, which reduces anxiety and protects the brain. Much research is done on this, but no one ever promotes it. Well, I think we all have to do more to do that, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I so agree. Like that's the most basic part about tea, right? Most fundamental part, and it needs more work getting out there.
Indeed, it is most strongest superpower, that is tea. But I wanted to say thank you everyone for the questions, and thank you so much, Eddie, for your dedication as well as your knowledge and how much you've shared with the floor here. I think we all appreciate it and have enjoyed your presentation tremendously. So thank you very, very much. For that. We can't wait to see what happens next in your journey. But before everyone goes, I'd like to say also, thank you for being here, and please do follow us, because in the next few webinars, we haven't decided exactly what the order is, but we will be talking to Joyce Miner from Cambridge Consultants on the tea grading system she has designed called the 5S system. This is really, really interesting and potentially a game changer for how we evaluate tea. We'll be talking about tea that is growing in Italy. We'll also be talking, not all in the same webinar, of course, we'll also be introducing a new digital platform that will revolutionize how we buy tea directly from producers. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And last but not least, in one of our lineups, we'll be talking about specialty tea that is growing in Sri Lanka. So once again, I wanted to say that, Esther exists to raise standards of tea everywhere. We do this by embracing innovation, share knowledge like we did today, and we encourage collaborations. And our main aim is to improve every cup of tea that is served and make sure that our producers get a fair price for their efforts to make better tea. Now, we are a not-for-profit organization and consist of wonderful volunteers from all over the world to help you bring great content, education programs, and events. And to do this, we rely heavily on membership to survive, and we really appreciate your support. So please do look at our packages. We have individuals as well as business packages as well. Specialtyteaeurope.com. Please do visit us. But for now, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here and can't wait to see you on our next webinar. Eddie, thank you so, so much once again. I think, you're getting so many comments from people. It was really, really good. So thank you and good luck in your journey. And we can't wait to be there for you and with you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for your comments and for your support as well. I really, really appreciate it. I'm fairly new and I want to learn from everyone. So if you want to reach out to me and connect and sort of further this discussion, I'm so open to it. Please do reach out.
Yes, and definitely, please do. If you don't have Eddie's email, please send it to us and we'll forward it to Eddie. Make sure you get in contact with her. But thank you once again, everyone. Have a good night, a good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in the world, okay? But take care of yourself, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much, Eddie. Have a good one too.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.